Okay, we're going to move on now to our first item, and that's the Secretariat update. Hand over to you, John, and that's on pages 15 to 20 of the agenda. There you go. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, highlight a number of key points within the Secretariat update. The first is in respect to transport priorities for the partnership. We received some good news earlier on from Tiwahanga in respect to the infrastructure priorities program, and within that, it recognised that the Greater Christchurch Mass Rapid Transit project, which was recognised as being of national significance and therefore included in the draft National Infrastructure Plan. So it's a positive recognition for one of our key priorities. That's obviously going to come through in the final later this year. We also have public transport futures, which, as this committee will know from previous meetings, it's one of the key building blocks of mass rapid transit in terms of public transport futures program. That is also in for consideration as well as part of the infrastructure priorities program through Tiwahanga, and we will hear about that later this year as well. But really good news, I think, in terms of that recognition for Greater Christchurch Mass Rapid Transit project. There's been some partnership working around housing, both through the Tiwai Punamu Community Housing Providers Network, which kind of built upon the endorsed Phase 2 of the Joint Housing Action Plan, which came through this committee in May. That's shaping up positively as well in terms of working with them to assist us in the delivery of that. As well as then there's been some work. I've been represented on the Canterbury Mayoral Forum's Regional Housing Working Group. There's work there, an update kind of being pulled together. It's probably recognised that this is largely from a local government perspective, but also that there is, as part of the next step, is actually the development and preparation of a future regional deal, which then creates the opportunity for greater involvement from partners around this table as well in respect to that. And lastly, a few things from a partnership systems and forward planning as well. So we're obviously well and truly advanced in looking at the calendar for next year of meetings and such, but also we've recently posted online in respect to our housing dashboard, which kind of aligns with the national policy statement in respect to the requirements around reporting on housing metrics, as well as we've had a refreshed website as well. So if you go on there, you'll note that it looks somewhat different as well, easy to navigate, and most importantly, it has a search bar as well and a key search function to kind of find things at your fingertips as well. So that's the key kind of points from the update, and obviously I'm open to take any questions.
Kia ora, John. Any questions from members for the update? No? Oh, Vicky?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'd just like a little bit of clarity around the where we're at with the regional deal working group. I think in paragraphs 4.10 and 4.11 of your report, it's just a little bit inconsistent, and I just can't see where we're at. It talks about preparing a progress update, and it says that there is a draft version, but the proposal hasn't yet begun. I'm just trying to understand an update on something that doesn't exist. I really can't understand where you're at with it, and I'd like a bit of clarity, please.
Through you, Chair, the regional deal is being developed through the Canterbury Mayoral Forum. The first stage of work at the moment is really drawing together what's known, and that effectively is the progress update. So what do we know in terms of the various councils' existing commitments, as well as with me being represented in the Secretariat, I'm attempting to bring in those commitments from the partnership as well, principally through the spatial plan, but also through the Joint Housing Action Plan, and also trying to flag that connection in between the partnership and the Canterbury Mayoral Forum on that. So really trying to provide a sub-regional perspective. So the update is really consolidating what we know, and the next step will be in the next triennium, which will be around the preparation of a future regional deal through the Canterbury Mayoral Forum.
So, and are you on target to have that update ready for the next Mayoral Forum?
So myself, Phil and Sam and Dan are all on the working group, as well as, is it Murray Black from Hiranui? So we have been pulling stuff together. We made a decision at the Mayoral Forum that we realised we probably weren't going to be first in line to get the money from the government, and that they had other priorities. So we weren't going to rush to get that in. When was it? In April? So we made a decision to put a holding letter in place, which went to the government, and now we've been working on a proposal, but a light touch proposal. And so there is a draft of that will be coming on Monday to our little working group meeting that we have, and then to the next Mayoral Forum meeting at the end of August. So that's where we're at, and if that gets approved there, then that would be submitted, but it's not the full proposal. It's a light touch proposal to then be worked on further in the next term. So that's where it's at. You can see that the major features of the transport is massive. So all the work that this group has done on public transport in particular, but also rural roads and bridges, because we've got to bring in all of our other districts from around the region. So that's the sort of work we're trying to do, and we're trying to tell the government that the 5% that we currently get of the National Fund is not enough, because we should be getting about 13 or 14% of the National Fund. So we're trying to show that and show what that investment would be for the region if we actually got what we should get. So that's a key part of it. There's other things about energy. I'm just trying to think of the other parts that we're really trying to highlight as things that across Canterbury we can all agree on, because as you can imagine, to get Waimati all the way to Kaikoura to agree on something is tricky. So that's why it's taking a bit of time as well.
So do you have any concerns about timing, noting that we didn't get in the first tranche? Do you have any concerns about our ability to be ready to put the next proposal in?
I'm personally not, although I'm not leading it. But because I think we made that decision that there was already priorities, you could already see the 3 that were going to get accepted, and they told us that was only going to be 1 in the first year and maybe 2 in the next year. So we're quite down the pecking order.
That's fine. Look forward to seeing an update as we go.
Cool. Yep.
In addition to your great explanation there, we did discuss that with the Minister when he was here a number of months ago. There was some rhetoric in the news about, and that wasn't clear, that wasn't actually his view, so he wasn't concerned that we weren't there and understood the workings that we were going through with that. I think the point that we probably need to reflect on is the engagement with our own respective councils, and to make sure that they're connected to that, and that's something we can connect in with the working group on Monday. And of course, just noting the comments from Tanya before, which we'll have a discussion with the chair about, because mana whenua are critical in that space, and I would be very welcoming of them being there at the table with us, and we'll just work through that directly, but we appreciate that feedback from Tanya earlier.
Cool. Sarah?
Kia ora, thank you. And that starts to address it, which was how is the decision-making being done for our regional proposal, is the first question. And the second one is has there been consideration around this table of a sub-regional deal? Because for a while they took city deals off the books, but they're back again. And I'm pretty sure that the grouping that we have here would be an ideal one for like a city deal. So 2 questions there.
Yeah, as you've highlighted, it changed through the process. It was city deals at the start, and then regional deals, and then regional and city deals. So it has been a bit hard to follow. But I think the overall thing is we're trying to be together as Canterbury, noting that obviously this group has a key part of that. So we've got similar staff, similar representatives that are all trying to work on it to bring that in, but we do have to balance it with the desires of our wider districts as well. So, yeah.
So because it is all balanced and things, how's the decision making being done on what gets proposed?
Well, ultimately to the Mayoral Forum. Yep.
So the group of mayors
yep.
get to do that on behalf of their councils without council sign off, or?
Well, that's up to each mayor and chair to be talking to their councils. That's what I would have thought.
Okay.
How that works. I mean, everything at the Mayoral Forum has to really be talked about at each council. So, yep, that's nothing new, I don't think. But there's it's still draft, so we haven't got anything on the table to actually be decided on yet. And Monday's discussion with our small group will be important to seeing how that goes forward to the Mayoral Forum at the next meeting.
Are we looking beyond, the individual sort of programs of work that we have and what we might get government to fund to more sort of high level strategic pieces like, for example, Wellington, government departments need more resilience in that kind of space. We're an incredibly resilient city now, like government department, here, like it's not a cash deal kind of thing, not a fix our infrastructure. We could host government departments, range of different things.
I haven't got my head
Opportunities.
around the detail yet, but
Yeah.
I'm sure that's some of the thinking that we're looking at. Like I said, we're looking at the key things that we know there is wide agreement on, like transport's a key one, both public transport and roads and bridges across the region. So that's one of the main highlights because we've got the work that we've already done together. So that's a sitter for being in there. But other things, they're less certain. Yeah. Yeah, and Tania?
Tēnā koutou. How many groups do we need? No,
Good question.
I'm going to be completely serious here, because every group you add, we have to add as well, and we're highly stretched, like you guys. So how many groups? So I see in the last couple of years, legs and teeth being added to a mayoral forum. Where now does that mayoral forum report back to here? Does it report back to its council? Like, what is the mechanism for what happens in these spaces? Again, and I appreciate it goes from Kaikoura down to Moiraki, but what is the form and function? Because all I get is, we've wrote this climate change strategy, come to our launch. Oh yeah, cool, no, because I'm not part of it, so why would I attend something? But if I look at this, so we're going to take it back to this regional deal, and again us, who's not sitting at the table, you all would have seen a release in the paper about Ngāi Tahu and Mint Energy release. That's a platform that allows other people to come into the platform, right? So it's bigger than just Ngāi Tahu and Mint Renewables. So that could have been part of a regional type of deal. We build infrastructure that creates $22 million for your fellas' rates at the moment. And that's just the infrastructure we've built for the housing that you take the rates from. We also, at a hapu level, work with houses. So this is to ensure the point of understanding we're not just sitting at the marae waiting for phone calls to dress and bless your places. We are politically savvy, economically savvy, and it's almost like there's groups on top of groups on top of groups, and parts of me get it because we have that at home as well. So apart from trying to be groups here, we've also got to deal with our internal groups at home. So it's not a statement or anything. I just want to land that everything you were trying to do in a regional deal, we're already doing.
Thanks, Tony. And it was good that Dan acknowledged that before, that we will follow up with Nigel, who's the chair of the Mayoral Forum, so Mayor Bowen from Timaru. So we will definitely do that.
Well, I think what I'm trying to raise is because we've already missed opportunities together for regional deals, things that we were already participating in.
But remember, it's not landed yet, so there is still time. It's never too late. And there has been some attempts to reach out. I know maybe not good enough, but there has been some attempts, so it's just about trying to nail that down. I take the point about how many groups do we need. You'll know that at the Regional Council we've been trying to create a conversation about that. That might come up in the review discussion about this group as well, which is our next item. So I look forward to the discussion and the debate around that because it is important. But you do need some sort of forum at a regional level to get everyone on the same page. So I think that's what the Mayoral Forum is attempting to do. Again, it's not a formal local government committee structure because it can't be. It's a forum to try to get us to work together on key issues. I'd like to see it be a bit more formal, but we're not there yet. And with local government reform on the cards, let's talk about it, but maybe not right now. But that's definitely a conversation I'm keen to have at some point. And of course, Ngāi Tahu and the Papatipi Runanga are a key to that. Is that all? Oh, Grant, you had a question?
Yeah, it strikes me that this, the regional deal stuff is obviously really important. But I kind of think look back to the formation of the government's decision to put us on the urban growth partnership list, and we were really late in getting on that. One of the things they wanted to ensure was that everybody in our local Greater Christchurch were aligned, and we proved that. And we proved that through the development of the spatial plan, the extensive public engagement that took place with support from our communities. So really the regional deal in making sure that there is really good alignment with our fellow TAs within the region, so that we do have the regional consensus and show that to the government. And of course, those things like the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee and all the work that they're doing in terms of transport vulnerabilities and all of those sorts of things are really, really important. But I kind of look back too, and as a result of the Urban Growth Partnership, we also got the Crown involved in the Whakawhanaki Kāinga Committee. And of course, that's now kind of sitting in abeyance. So hopefully that will either be revived, because that was really important, having the Crown, housing and transport, being able to participate with this committee. And if that same thing arrives with the regional deal process, then I think that will be really important too. So it's just not to forget that was a catalyst for change.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. I think that is important to note, that we have done a bunch of good work together, and we shouldn't underestimate that. But one thing that I find in meetings with ministers is that they often sort of criticise us for not having a plan down here, not just in Christchurch or Canterbury, but the South Island. But what is clear is that we don't get our fair share of money from central government. So our job is to try to do that together. The various groups and forums we have are not perfect, but we do make an attempt to try to be united so that we can get that, because if you're not, they're not interested. So I just think that is important to note. And yeah, thanks, Grant, for acknowledging the spatial plan work. So we have got plans. We do know what we want. Often we just don't get the money that flows into the south here. So that's something that we need to keep working on. So thank you, Grant. Any other questions on this item? If not, we'll put the resolution up there that we receive and note the Greater Christchurch Partnership Secretariat update. Do I have a mover for that? Sarah, thank you. Seconder, Vicky Henstock, thank you. It's because we've got two Vickies. Victoria, kia ora, Victoria. So all those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried, thank you. Let's go to our next item, which is item 8. So we're jumping forward in the agenda, and this is our Greater Christchurch Partnership Review. And we've got our two guests here that have been working on this with us. So Sarah Badley and Kat. Welcome. Kia ora. Over to you, John. Yep.
Through you, Chair, as Sarah and Kat set up, I just want to make two brief points. Firstly, the independent review has been undertaken in accordance with the terms of reference that were approved by this committee back in March. And just to, kind of really put it up in lights that this is an independent review completed by Martin Jenkins, and hence why we have Sarah and Kat here to present the findings and really frame the discussion that follows afterwards. Over to you, Sarah and Kat.
Morena koutou, thanks very much for having us here today. Just acknowledge the mayors and chairs and councillors in the room, and also to mana whenua. Acknowledge and thank you for having us, which is a very busy time for you. And I'm cognizant of our report and its findings landing at a challenging times in terms of your triennium. And you'll see through our recommendations, we are recommending, a good vigorous discussion, which we're expecting on the findings. But as it goes to the matters that we were actually just talking about in the previous agenda, that the substance be taken forward and how you best organise yourself in the next triennium, including the issues that have been raised by mana whenua and the Crown partners to the partnership. We've provided you with two substantive reports. One relates to the insights and one relates to our recommendations and findings. We'll to ease your workload, summarise them in a presentation that we'll share and work through. The findings were informed by detailed conversations over a 2-month period with many of you in this room, but also with your staff and with government officials and with mana whenua. I think it would be fair to say that of the reviews that we have done in Martin Jenkins, this was the broadest church of feedback. Compared to many, there was not a strong consensus in terms of recommended path forward, and that was somewhat disappointing to us, but is an accurate and fair reflection of the process that we undertook. And in part, what you were asking us to do was to take an independent view of that. So I stand by our findings and the process we went through in that regard. So I'm going to, if it's okay through you, Chair, just hand over to my colleague, Kat Moody. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Sarah Baddeley, and we'll share our findings. There'll be plenty of opportunity for questions throughout.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for having us. So I thought we'll just start on the key findings. So these really sort of fell into two parts. So one is this past performance and current challenges. So I think we want to start by acknowledging what worked well. So I think the partnerships really demonstrated impressive effectiveness during crisis response and strategic planning phases. We really heard from people that when there was sort of an external driver, that's when the partnership was able to really step up. So when we looked back and heard about earthquake recovery coordination, delivery of the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, we really heard that the partnership was operating at its best. It was decisive, focused, and really focused on trying to deliver outcomes for the community. But we really did identify then also some trends that we wanted to sort of address and put forward without dressing them up. So they might have come forward as being sort of quite, for some, confronting. And as Sarah said, we absolutely received a wide variety of feedback. So we heard that political confidence in the partnership had declined, and we really heard that the decision-making, there's a perspective that decision-making process has become slower than it has been, and yes, there's an attempt for it to be consensus-driven, but that it has lacked a strategic focus. So I would say that we did hear that coming out from a number of the people that we interviewed. And sort of that agility that was identified as making the partnership effective during the crisis periods seems to have been somewhat lost recently. We also heard that the implementation of the spatial plan really remains challenging. So despite having that respected work completed, and we heard really positive feedback about the quality of the spatial plan itself. I think one of the quotes I recall was heard that one of the best in the country. But despite having that completed, there's been a struggle with that regulatory translation gaps, resource constraints, and limited authority for driving delivery. That is not all on you. There is a lot of context that obviously sits around that. But we did hear that really the partnership can really plan well, but it's finding it difficult to translate those plans effectively into action. And then I think probably perhaps most tellingly, multiple stakeholders questioned the partnership's current purpose. I'd say one of the nuances here was that the feedback did split a little bit according to the time that people had spent serving on the partnership. So for those who had been on the partnership for a long time, there was a lot more positivity and clarity for them about the purpose of the partnership. And for those who had more recently joined the partnership, there was a lot more questioning about what is the purpose, like what is it here to achieve. But I think that when you do have a number of members who are asking, like, what is our purpose, what is the point, that's a real clear signal that there needs to be greater clarity in what that purpose is. And then, of course, you have a significantly changing external environment. So that is creating additional uncertainty about collaborative approaches. And I think that that's probably added to the confusion as well. We also identified the partnership sort of shifted from strategic leadership more to that operational coordination. And so the strategic edge really feels like it's been lost. So I think what we heard in some around the past performance and current challenges was like the partnership can be effective. Like, people have seen it work. We heard really good examples from all of you and from the many others that we spoke to about when times have worked well. But there are clearly like past gaps. And so a gap between that past success and current performance. So I think if you really want to remain sort of like relevant and effective in tackling the Greater Christchurch's challenges, which are large and many and require that strategic level of thinking, then change is required.
Thanks, Kat. I'll then move to the substantive themes of our findings and future considerations. And whenever we undertake independent reviews like this, it always needs to be informed by a much richer context which sit beyond the terms of reference. So I'm just going to acknowledge that as well, because I think that will be key to your judgment for your ultimate decision making. Obviously, the relationship between the partners in the partnership and changes that are occurring within local government, particularly the changes to the resource management system, but that's not the only change that's going on, are relevant and key, and they were front of mind when we interviewed many of you. The changing context for the relationship with mana whenua and the difference in views about the shared aspirations of mana whenua and councils as they play out in Greater Christchurch, I think is at a point of transition. And there is some choices to be made there around the way in which that mana whenua relationship is taken forward. When Kat shared the view of political frustration, we used the small p there, so that included some frustration on behalf of mana whenua. As we opened up the session today, you were talking about the relationship between your urban growth partnership, government's expectations of you to work collaboratively in region, and success for the challenges that are facing Greater Christchurch. And here we'd observe that you do have a bit of a decision point in the next triennium about the degree to which you approach this challenge to coordinate and collaborate at a whole of Canterbury region versus a Greater Christchurch aspiration, because the challenges that we heard in terms of process and consensus taking time are likely to be harder the broader your church. And so I think this issue of what is truly regional and what is truly Greater Christchurch will continue to occupy some of your time. And it's not to say that a successful metropolitan area, Greater Christchurch, is not of critical importance to the broader region, but the interests and challenges that we see in Greater Christchurch are different from the ones that you're seeing in the broader region. So our findings in terms of the future is that we do think that you need structural and operational changes to maintain relevance and effectiveness. We do identify a range of options for you, and that is reflective of both our view, your appetite and the timing. So really we are giving you some options with relative strengths and weaknesses, and they will be matched with your aspirations when you return, I suspect. We do take lessons from other urban growth partnerships around the country and further afield in terms of what is critical to make a modern, successful, dynamic, prosperous urban environment work well. And we do say that care needs to be taken with that. And that, I think, really goes to the relationship between Greater Christchurch's demands, which are inherently metropolitan, and the broader regional demands, which are not inherently metropolitan. So the issue of these issues and the preferred partnership model, we are saying ought best be taken forward after the election, where you have obviously from mana whenua's perspective a continuity, but on the elected members' side you will have many of the challenges that Greater Christchurch is facing going forward fresh on your agenda. So we were proposing now to talk about the options in a little bit more detail and walk through some of those. We were also proposing, Chair, and I should have said it at the beginning, to hold questions. but I'll just turn to my colleague and make sure that I've captured everything.
Yes.
Excellent. So we'll work for it now in terms of what we thought good would look like.
Question, Grant?
Well, a challenge of some of the comments that have been made. Is that possible or is that appropriate? I'm not sure.
I reckon, is it good to get through the presentation, then we can get into it? If you can do that, all good?
Sounds good. Get through the presentation, then get into it. So, right. So following on from the findings that we've just presented, what we really did then was to identify 5 what we call design principles. You can sort of think of them as evaluation criteria for developing the options for change. So these design principles, the way I think about them is really they provide clear decision-making filters, and that ensures consistency in like how you would approach any potential change while you keep anchored towards addressing the issues that have been identified and have led you to want to make some change. So these are the 5 principles that we identified, and I'll talk through them in a little bit more detail. They're set out more in the report. It's strategic focus, stewardship, partnership, value for money, and responsive. So, the next one. So, in terms of strategic focus, I mean, you would have clearly heard that from the findings that this is something that is needed. So, this is about really ensuring that the partnership maintains that laser focus on the most critical strategic challenges that are facing Greater Christchurch, and that there is a focus on then deciding where does the collective attention and resources go. Like being able to have that North Star so you can ask, does this belong in our agenda? Does it address the key strategic challenges that we're here to solve? And I think that also leads you to then think about some of that those operating rhythm questions that come later. So that can be things like, instead of just thinking about reporting on outputs or things that are done, and what is the distance travelled towards the outcomes that you're trying to achieve? Stewardship. So this is really about ensuring that that parties are working collaboratively and recognizing you're custodians of long-term interests. It's not just about managing today's challenges, but thinking forward as well. So this really propels you to think towards more systems thinking, like considering how decisions are impacting future generations and the broader community, thinking both about provision, funding, regulatory levers as well. Partnership, I guess that one's in the name. That really acknowledges that your collective impact exceeds what any single entity could achieve alone. So we think about true partnership and when partnership is operating its best rate in any context, it creates genuine value through that increased scale, greater value, greater influence. But to get to that point, that really requires open communication, mutual trust, and being crystal clear about roles and responsibilities as well. Value for money. I don't know if you know, but you have 2 former Treasury analysts sitting here presenting to you. So Sarah and I always care about value for money. I think it's in our bones. So that really ensures that you maintain ratepayer trust by demonstrating responsible stewardship of public funds. I know that you all know that that's important, but that really requires that constant evaluation of whether investments and decisions are delivering optimal outcomes for the resources committed. But then also thinking, and as we did, as you'll see in the report, looked at also the value for money of the partnership and the way that it operates. And then being responsive. So that's really ensuring the partnership has those effective mechanisms in place so that it can remain agile and relevant in a changing environment. And so again, this also, when you think about the potential options that come out of this, you can then also think about what is the operating rhythm that supports this partnership to be the most effective. And there have been some changes in that, but that is something that sort of then helps you to decide, if we need to be agile, then what is the operating rhythm that we need to support that agility? So taken together, these principles can then be used to inform any decisions that are made about changes to the design and operation of the partnership in future. And now we're going to go to options. Can I just say one thing? This is where your A3 sheet comes in, if you've got that.
You got a clarifying question?
Yeah, I have got a clarifying question. On the value for money, I'm just looking to the options. One of the options, I think it's option 2, for example, has got 2 stars, which is somewhat fits and notable deficiencies, against everything except value for money, which then has 4 stars. So I'm just curious how you're assessing that, because to me that sounds more like the cheap option, but really doesn't deliver on much, which isn't the same as value. Value for me means it's good spending for good outcomes. So I find it weird having 2 stars for everything except value for money, which is 4. So how are you defining value for money?
We do look, when we think about value money, at both the cost but also influence. So we have seen and we receive feedback on a drift of the strategic items facing Greater Christchurch being considered on the mayoral forum agenda. So I think if we were looking at a large strategic agenda in your current work program, then that judgment would have been different. But it was a situational assessment around actually the bulk of the big strategic issues that we're seeing advanced for Greater Christchurch are being discussed at the mayoral forum. Overlay that with some relatively, in the scheme of things, every costs.
Thanks. It is important because out of the 4 options, which you're going to go into shortly, only one of them's got like a positive value for money sort of metric, whereas the rest of them are showing, 2 or 3 stars. I mean, there's one with 3, so that could be said to be in the middle. But so that's an important consideration actually, because none of them are really showing that they're fantastic. But all good. Let's carry on.
Thank you. So we've provided you with some model choices, and I probably want to assure you that this is not Kat and I interviewing our keyboard. These are real options that were discussed by those that we engaged with. And as I said, you are a broad church, and those that you work with in terms of mana whenua and Crown, they have views as well as your own staff. So the broad options that we've set out for you range in ambition of structural change and also breadth of functional scope. Functional scope being what you actually do, what your core functions are. And we've assessed these, and we've also identified that your appetite or judgment for these choices really will depend on the broader context within which you're operating. So if there is an appetite for broader structural change, then that makes the relative costs of pursuing changed approach for Greater Christchurch Partnership different than if there isn't. So I'll just go through them in more detail. And as Kat said, you've got a summary A3 in front of you for those like me who require trifocal lenses these days. The core functions around strategic planning, collaborative leadership, implementation, oversight, and kind of advocacy are set out in your terms of reference, and our insights report and our findings speak to how effective you are perceived to be in your own minds and those who are close to you as delivering those. And that is why there is an opportunity to enhance the way you deliver the status quo, particularly around strategic anticipation of the big issues that are facing Greater Christchurch, a view from some that issues associated with, for example, the merits for a city or regional deal ought have been progressed in this forum versus the mayoral forum, and also related to shared accountability for actual implementation of the spatial planning, resource commitments, planning commitments, and regulatory changes. And that is something that we see occurring in other urban growth partnerships. We see this duality, both a hard focus on accountability, collective accountability. So Jim sits next to Joe and says, why didn't you pass your LTP with the funding we needed? A real conversation across the table around that, and a real understanding of why Joe might not have been able to do that. And at the same time as looking forward beyond into the next horizon. Some of the other urban growth partnerships around the country are commissioning demographic trend reports. They're looking at things like where retirement and aged care facilities should be, and how the kind of older people should be experiencing their communities. So that's that duality of focus, both hard accountability for shared delivery and a more strategic foresight. Probably the area that was kind of interesting to us, and now we've seen some reports come out of reviews of what's happening at Christchurch NZ, it becomes clear. So we did receive quite a lot of feedback around economic aspirations, and we weren't quite sure, being two recovery and treasury officials, whether we were sort of, there was a bias there, because we find talking about economic challenges really interesting. Cyclical pressures, it's true the economy, although you're doing quite well compared to the rest of the country, is front of mind. But there was a lot of feedback around economic ambition. And we recognise that that's a little bit at odds at the moment with the direction you're getting from central government around back to basics. So we've kind of identified that, we've captured it for you. I think it sits within the broader context of what you have to consider around what is the role of your individual organisations and your collective ambition in that area. And then broadening out when we look at the lessons from international examples around deal making, the capacity to execute large scale investment and partnering, creating different, things like joint venture arrangements, all of those kind of mechanisms that we outlined. So we've given you, in a more cynical, I'm sure we'll have some cynical response, a smorgasbord of options, but what we were trying to do is give you a pathway to consider, informed by not only what you do currently well, but probably more importantly, what is a level of aspiration about what is done well throughout the country and overseas for metropolitan area and peripheral areas such as yourselves. So speaking to timing and recommendations, because we weren't definitive in a single preferred option, the recommendations are an unfortunate and uncomfortable mix of process-based suggestions, which reflect the political timing that you face yourselves. But I probably would say that you are far more experienced in getting going in a new triennium for those that are taking the brave choice to return or hopefully return. We're saying sort of don't delay when you come back because of the unfortunate coordination issues with central government's election period and your election period. You need to hit your bootstraps when it comes to things like regional deals, shaping how local government changes may or may not play out in your region, and also your community weights. So all of that will be weighing heavy on your shoulders, and I'm not meaning to teach you how to suck eggs, but essentially our recommendations are biased towards action immediately after you return. And they do say for council officers and the Secretariat to get ready for that. I don't actually propose to go through the Gantt chart unless those who have a strong attention to detail draw me back to it in the discussion, but we do break down the timing of when we think that should occur. So I think probably the more valuable use of time through you, Chair, is to pause and enable discussion and questions. Very happy to receive any feedback and explore any aspects of the more detailed reports.
Kia ora, Sarah. Kia ora, Kat. Thank you for that. Agree. Happy to hear discussion. I just would note that obviously in our recommendations, we're not being asked to make any decisions on the options that are in front of us today, but it is good to have a discussion about them, to get feedback, to ask questions, and to discuss that amongst us. So I think that's really important. But yeah, at the end of the day, our decisions that are being put to us today are not to make a decision on any one of the options, but to leave that or to propose that for the next triennium, and when we have new representatives around the table or hopefully some of the same, that can be taken up then. But I do note those the Gantt charts, and that there are some things that do need to happen sooner rather than later. So that's important to maybe raise as well and talk about. So happy to open the floor and go from there. Grant, you had some things earlier on, so where you go.
Yeah, look, I suppose it's the observations that you've, as an independent thing, independent process. I find some of the comments that have been given to you, I don't think they're in the room, but anyway, obviously you've picked those things up. But for me, being here nearly 6 years on this committee, a huge amount of consensus, driving forward. The public are behind us. I did note that there was no mention in your report about the GC 2050 process and the huge amount of public engagement, 3,000 submissions on that one. There's no mention of, because this is where we've come from, this is what the spatial plan is based on. There's no mention of the hui mai, extensive consultation process with 7,000 people. There's no mention of the extensive hearing and submission process, again with a huge number of submissions and hearing process for people in this room as well as people from HUD. So, I mean, that is not just, I just think it's just unfortunate that you haven't mentioned those, or the people you were interviewing didn't mention those either, because that's what's driving us. There was other mention that we haven't been able to translate this into the regional policy statement. Well, the government has put a halt to that at Christmas, but there is an extensive urban form and development section within the draft regional policy statement, which talks about housing capacity, housing form, and the way forward. So I kind of think, for those aspects, I do want to say too that, the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, it is a visionary document, and it does have an implementation strategy at the end of it, but primarily it is a vision of the people, and we have delivered that, and it has a great deal of support and enthusiasm. So the next tricky thing, which is you quite rightly say, is how we deliver going forward, but the vision remains. So in terms of strategic, what are the most important I think the key thing is on those opportunities and directions. They are the key to developing things going forward. And my feeling is that on page 87 of your report, there is a chart there saying what we're doing. We're doing a lot. Our secretariat has done an amazing job, and our staff have done an amazing job bringing forward papers that gather consensus around this table because they're so good. But look, I do agree about the economic side of things. And I think having worked in London regeneration project in the 80s, one of the key drivers of change was the incentives that are offered to the businesses community, a declaration of special economic zones to actually help drive that change. And we haven't gone through that process. In the 2050 exercise, there was a specific narrative for the economy. And you could see in terms of the developers concerned about that. So I think that is something that needs to be taken forward. The public-private sector, the government's calling on more infrastructure and more engagement, value for money. And I think that's something that we do need to do and find a way forward for that. But on the whole, I think going forward, for me, it is raising the bar for our secretariat more than anything. I don't know about the structural change. I think it's kind of like just moving forward with what we've got, but just elevating it up a little bit. It's me.
Thanks, Grant. Thanks for reminding us of some of those things that we have done really well, so thank you. Gail.
Kia ora, thank you. I guess just moving, sort of adding on really to where Grant has been speaking. from my perspective, I look back over the years, and I think I am one of the ones that's been here a while now, that at the beginning, when I first came on here, we were doing really powerful stuff. We were getting a lot of things done, and I think that possibly around what's happened is the decline in confidence, I think, could be seen as being more about the widening number of forums that have been involved in this. And I do have a concern about the mayoral forum because it doesn't, from my perspective, sit anywhere in my world. So and I think that what's happened is when that's broadened, we've lost or paused things have been paused, such as the spatial plan. The urban growth partnership, I think, could be a lot stronger, and we can see from the research that's been done that those councils and forums that have those urban growth partnerships tend to get a lot more notice from central government than others, and it is for me that's a really good area because mana whenua are a key part of being part of that urban growth partnership, and so that was a good space for mana whenua. I would not like to see any other forum overshadow that particular forum because I think that has the ability to make a difference for Greater Christchurch. I do agree with the design principles. I think that they're really great. But from my perspective, I think that I prefer to look at this as what are in terms of the options, it's the breadth of functional scope that I think that needs to be set rather than the structural change itself, because I do think that we have seen this group make great decisions. The spatial plan was really was very well written, I believe, and the consultation was very broad. So from my perspective, it would be looking, when we come back to look at it, it would be looking more at some of the functional parts of the scope rather than option 1, 2 or 3. So, kia ora. Thank you.
Tēnā koe, Gail. Kia ora. Thank you for that. And again, your knowledge of being part of that, all those processes that Grant mentioned as well, acknowledge your work there, and thanks for the reminder about functional scope, because that is important. I think that is noted around how delegations are done to be able to get on with stuff, so I think that is important. Thank you. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And look, firstly, can I acknowledge Kat and Sarah, and thank you for the work that you've done on this. It's clearly not been an easy task when we're probably not all on message and have differing opinions as to where this should be sitting. And that's clear in the recommendations that we have with the 4 options. So we did ask an independent company with great reputation to do this work for us, so thank you for doing it. Whether we like the findings or not is another matter in here, but I think that you've given us your professional opinion, and we go in the future. That's a discussion, I think, rightly, that takes place in our next triennium. There's a lot of change going on at the moment, and where we rightly fit will be something that we do need to reflect on. But like Gail and Grant, don't want to forget the great things that we've done and to celebrate those and lose those in the equation. I think I can speak safely that I've been the longest that's been on the partnership. I was on the original committee and sat through the original hearings on it. So I've seen it transition over the years from our involvement was originally we came in because we wanted to see transport work and to make sure that the roading networks were connecting our district effectively, noting that we knew growth was coming and we were planning for that. So that's what sold us to get there in the first place, but it's expanded over that time and got a lot broader. And I think the work that we did with the spatial planning and the original document that then became the blueprint for Christchurch and Greater Christchurch's recovery is something we can all be proud of, because that was an uplift. If that hadn't have been there, we may not have recovered as we have, and as quickly. And Minister Brownlee at the time was able to uplift that, and that became the work. But there'd been extensive work gone into that. Grant's right, and before around the spatial planning, it has been a job that's been well done. And I think Gail's reflections were similar. I like, there are a number of aspects in this that we can pick bits and pieces of, but today I think it's for us to receive that, to thank the independent reviewers for the work that you've done for us, and we will take our time to reflect on what works for us in the future, noting that I do note the comments about Mayoral Forum and others, and I don't want to lose the aspects here where it keeps our elected members connected, and that's the bit where we're not always connected in that space, and that's the bit I think this partnership has done well. And so there's aspects of that I think we need to just consider and how we are fit for purpose for the future. I think Tanya's observations are right with all our various structures. There's so many of them. In fact, when we're having discussions with ministers at times, they're confused as to where their entry point is at various times. So we need to take stock of that, and that's something that I know there's discussions going on about, but how we rightly place those will be a decision for us. And I think post-election is the right place, and we should get onto that as soon as able to make sure that we pick up these findings and then determine what our structure is best for the future. So that's my reflections, and I'm sure colleagues will no doubt have views as well. But again, thank you, Sarah and Kat, for your work.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks for acknowledging the work that has been undertaken, and of course reinforcing the celebration of the good work we have done together and thinking about the future. So thank you. I've got Neville next, and then I'll go to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, mine's much the same comments. Look, thank you to Grant and for their. You can never move forward unless you acknowledge what you've done in the past, and that's something that we really need to do. And I was certainly one of those interviewed through the process and made my voice very clear. Never lose this. It's as simple as that. Unfortunately, in the busy world that we're in, and the busier and busier it gets, we all know about the submissions that we're making to government at the moment, and they're coming every day. We used to talk about it once a month, then it came once a week, now it's every day that you have a submission in front of you that you've got to answer. In this busy world, unfortunately, as councillors, forget the Mayoral Forum, they can meet whenever they want because it's a very small group. As councillors, we do not get the chance to actually get together in our close regions like we should, to network into action without huge cost, to network, talk about where we're going, talk about these plans that have been created for the right purposes and that are very good. So never lose this, whatever you do, whatever the form is, do not lose it. I won't be here, so what you guys do, and it is for the next council that comes in to make the changes. But the one thing that I do want to put across the table is everybody talks about how great we were after the earthquake. Well, it doesn't really matter, because after a disaster there is a natural slowing as time goes on. That's what we're in. We discussed around our own personal council about, so how do we transition after 10 years of an earthquake from doing everything in 5 minutes to going back to what was normal timing to get things done? An extremely hard exercise. We're not there yet, and we're 15 years after an earthquake. Everybody wants it done now. And I had a discussion with Gail earlier, and I said, what's the problem with time? If nobody's going to die, why does it matter whether it's this week or next week? And it doesn't. We need to make sure that we get there and get there properly. And that's what this group does. And I just remind you of that. The earthquake is gone. It's not fixed 100%, but it's gone. So slow down and do take your time to do things and make sure that everybody's involved correctly. And when you come to do this, I wouldn't be too worried about stars. I'd be more worried about that you're doing the right thing, and make sure that your councils are involved with the region to make sure you're doing the right thing. I know that's what this is about, and I acknowledge what Dan has said about independence, and I thank you for your work. And the interviews were great in my view. But my warning is, do not lose this, whatever you do.
Thanks, Neville. Yeah, really good reminder to us about the collaboration. That's really important. It does take time. It does cost money. It's just how we do it the best. And so I think, thank you for reminding us of that. Lydia.
Cool. I think I have the pleasure of coming in here with fresh eyes. And, you know, spending the past 3 years here. And I think it's really important to acknowledge the work that people have done before my time here as well. There's been a lot, as you said, Grant. The spatial plan, there's housing and urban development happening at the moment, the public transport, and it's all really important to still keep sight on that and the great things that have happened. As a newcomer, it allows those fresh eyes. So I just want to note that, you know, this isn't decision making, but it's really important to capture everybody's thoughts for the next incoming partnership to have our thoughts captured. I think your interviews were really great. It allowed a really safe, open space to have honest conversations, and I appreciated that. And it leads me to think to what Gail has said about functional scope and, you know, what are we doing and how's that going to happen? And I look to the future of reform with local government, with the RMA, and how can we utilise this as a protection space of us as councils in Canterbury, but as our partnership as well. And sometimes there is strength in numbers if you're looking to expand, but also that can be more difficult because the more people, the harder it is to find decision. And I look at the value and the time, cost and efficiency for members and for our mana whenua partners to stretch them thin is also not fair, of having all these multiple forums and organisations that we expect or ask these people to be at. And it is their right to be so, but we can't keep stretching people thin. So I see that there needs to be some efficiency made in what we are doing with our functional scope. And as I have not been a member of the Mayoral Forum, it is really hard to comment on to that, but I think the word partnership here leans into things more than a forum. And so that is what the words are leaning really importantly to me around partnership. And if we were to step into that type of space and reforming this, it would need to be a subcommittee with appropriate members because, as Neville has said, there's value and connection for us as neighbours and working together. And that is where I go back to the strength in numbers with reform. So I think it is really important to not lose this. And potentially, maybe there does need to be a discussion about an enhanced mayoral forum that is actually a connection with our elected members as well. That's all.
Kia ora, Lydia. Thank you. And it's great to have some fresh thinking here as well. So thank you for bringing that to us. Any other comments that members want to provide or any questions? Yeah, Sarah. No, keep your hands up if you want to speak. Yeah.
Kia ora. And I think that Neville and Lydia are right, that person-to-person, governance-to-governance connection between our councils is crucial, and that has really dropped off this term. It's been really busy, but it has started to have an impact, and we've seen without that understanding of what each council is going through and that shared connection, there's started to be a little bit of sniping in public, between councils from different councils, that kind of stuff. And that doesn't build the trust that we need it to do if we want this to work. So whoever's around the table next term does need to make sure that any decisions that are made with good relationships in place between all of the governance for all of the partner councils. whether that is just at the sub-region or the regional if things happen at the Mayoral Forum level. Otherwise, we won't get buy-in. Otherwise, we will end up fragmenting. And I think it just goes to show that work, the soft work, the relationship work with councils, with mana whenua, is the crucial space that needs to be nurtured more than it has been. And yeah, some people think it's, just a bit of talk and a few coffees, but actually it builds trust, builds relationships, and allows us to make progress. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Vicky?
Yeah, thank you. So I sort of feel fairly new on this as well. It's just in here on this really mostly this term only. And I think it's really, I really would emphasise that importance of having more than just the mayors, that it is getting a broader perspective, because I mean mayor's obviously really important, but you also have to have your councillors supporting you, or nothing happens. So I think that having that bit of extra councillor opportunities to be in the forum as well as, or in the partnership's really important. In terms of the spatial plan, I mean, it literally feels like it was about last week when that got signed off. So to imagine and be criticising that it's not delivering yet is like, I don't know what people's, this is to Neville's point, I don't really know what, I've worked on council side and developed spatial plans myself, and they don't happen overnight. They don't even happen, you don't necessarily see the effects in a year, especially when you realise all the ripple effects that needs to create in order to actually deliver something. I think it's been smart that this partnership's identified some key things that can really be driven and that are really urgent, like the housing. But you've got to give it some time. Don't destroy it before it's had a chance to bear fruit. So that's really my two key observations. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. Yeah, I'll go to you, Tanya, and then to you, Victoria, and then to you, Phil.
I've been privileged to see the review twice, and I just encourage and think with this table, whatever decisions you make here, the impact that you have, because actually I've sat at every level of this Greater Christchurch partnership, from SOG to SEAG to transport to everything. The not clarity with the not clear decision making that doesn't happen at this table, the ripple effect that has for everybody else trying to understand really what we're saying. And that's the time and cost of our staff as well. So I could make these comments because I've sat at every single level of this and always confused, like, what are they up to? What are they asking for? Not my governor, no. But just the consideration for the decisions or whatever it looks like at that table, the ripple impacts it has for the staff.
Thanks, Tanya. Victoria?
Oh, thank you very much. At the very beginning, you talked about the comment about the very broad church, and at the very beginning of our papers, the comment says a very diverse range of views, and you mentioned that it was more so than any other similar reviews. And you girls have done a lot of these, and I recognise that, and we're extremely fortunate to have the talent and the experience undertaking this piece of work for us. You commented about the length of tenure on the committee as perhaps being one of the underlying reasons as to why there was that divergence of view. But I wonder whether there is anything else that you have observed during this process that you think may feed into why else there has been such a divergence of views on this, because we haven't really touched on anything other than tenure. And now that we are through this process, and what you had at the beginning and what you may have thought and where you landed at the very end, not that you've made a decision, you may have learnt some things along the way. So I want to know what's not in this. Maybe that's another question, but what else is it that makes this group so, whether it was difficult or diverse, what is it that makes this different?
I think a superb question. You're right. We this is not my first rodeo in terms of independent reviews or cats. I think probably without sort of betraying confidence, because obviously we had a good amount of feedback from both people around this table, but also your staff and also Crown officials and mana whenua at a governance level and at a technicians level as well. So just remember that the feedback came from a broader church than just you good folk. So in addition to tenure, which Kat alluded to, that's natural, especially when you have had success. There's an anchoring bias, that there is a pride and a reflection on things that you were a party to achieving, which is warranted, well justified, and perfectly natural. So it isn't surprising that when things go well, people look back fondly at those and remember them, and there's a kind of, that's, and I don't want to, I do think it was significant, and we say that in our report, and that the spatial plan is widely regarded as one of the best. So there is, but your job is to move forward, and so that's kind of a response to that. There is some feedback in the report that is perhaps more difficult to surface. I would say there is some feedback around predetermined agendas and discussions that are occurring prior to meetings. There is a challenging scrutiny that you have of having to discuss really thorny issues in a public forum, which is good for democracy but challenging for robust exchange and discourse. And so that those two go together, because you need to have sort of private meetings to inform yourselves of others' perspectives, to ensure that you are well informed and conduct yourself with appropriateness that your community would expect, and those sit in tension. Another observation I would make is probably around, and it goes to the points that were just made by Tanya, so I'm really glad that she made them. Your officers and your technicians, they serve you. And so if you are not acting as collaboratively as a partnership would require, then it will be very difficult for them to then act as collaboratively as a partnership would require. And we see this often when we evaluate, advise on collective impact, collaborative partnership constructs. You need to be holding, obviously your executives are held to account for what they do for you, but they also need to be held to account for what they do for the collective. Now that's the worst kind of matrix management, and it takes time and it takes effort, but that is what is required when you're partnering without the benefit of structure. So that's some of the meat. So going forward, my advice to you would be, and I think that Gail's actual advice to you is the best, which is look at this functional scope. For example, I look at what you're facing, and should the government move on things like GST, revenue returning to region, that's a big ambitious opportunity. Then your distribution approach in your region is going to be fearsomely complicated. That balance between your broader Canterbury region and your urban demands will be the same that the government faces at a national scale. So, Greater Christchurch needs to be getting ready for how to have that conversation, and how to have that both at the regional and amongst yourselves. Think about deal making. You've already had some evidence from Ngaitahu that, given that Mint and Infratil were at the table, they have excellent skills in deal making. Bring them to that table for deal making in the future in terms of functional scope. So go through the functions, decide what you want to discuss where, and then hold your staff to account to serving all of you as well as you individually, and find those ways to have the conversations you need to, in as open a way as you can. Kat?
That was a Great question, Victoria. And I think that that's one of the things that I have pondered on in this, because it was just, usually what happens, so in a lot of these reviews, is after maybe you get through, say, 30% of the interviews, you get a very clear sense of where it's going, right? After 30% of the interviews, most of the time, I could write the outline of the final report. In this one, that was impossible. It sort of kept changing along the way, and I were waiting for this sort of some consensus on multiple areas to arrive, which didn't. And so sometimes at 3 a.m, these are the things that I think about. And so a couple of thoughts, and I'm not saying that these are right, but these are the things that came to me was, one, I think there, depending on what you value, depends then, that drives some of the commentary. So for those who valued collaboration and perhaps over time have seen the results of partnership and relationships, which sometimes is referred to as the soft stuff, but I think it's actually the hard stuff. That meant that in times of crisis, whether that was earthquake, whether that was COVID, people could pick up the phone and they knew who to call and things could move quickly. And they put that down to some of the relationships that they had built through the partnership. If you value outputs and things getting done and productivity and things moving fast, you might look to the things not being achieved as fast as you like, and then you would have a different commentary. The other one is, as we identified at the start with that, because we heard from people about this lack of a unifying purpose, or people interpret the purpose of the forum differently. So if everybody has a different interpretation of what that purpose is, then when you ask people, is it achieving it, then they all answer differently, because they're answering, is it achieving the purpose that I have interpreted this organisation to have? So I think those two things have driven some of that, I want to do this, huge variety in response.
Thank you, Sarah and Kat. Good question, Victoria. I'll go to you next, Phil. And I've got you, Sam, too. I've got your hand up there as well. I think that's really important thing, that there is a bit of consensus, though, that I can see, in that none of the options are saying don't do it anymore. They're all saying stay together. It's just how we do it and how we be better at it. So I think that's
before our elections, right? Otherwise, it would take to the middle of April next year, and then you waste another 6 months. And it's very good what you've done, very professional. Organisations like this, we always need to look in the mirror, because sometimes you can get so far down the rabbit hole you can't see the mirror because it's too dark. And having independence gives us a fresh perspective. We may not like what we hear, but it's always good to have a good shake of the cage and go, are we doing it right? And it crystallises stuff in there. But one of the good things is, in your report, is after the election, when the new people who are here, whoever they are, don't let the grass grow under our feet, because we've got to get going, otherwise we'll be standing still. So I thank you for your report. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Sam?
Yeah, thank you, and have appreciated everyone's comments so far. Yeah, I appreciate the work that's been done. I guess it shows the value that there has been in partnership and the successes that we have had together. I just think we've got to the point now, though, that we're having successes kind of in spite of our form, and because of strong relationship, and there's now time to think about actually how do we do this better. I like what Craig, you just said, nothing in this report says don't keep meeting together, but also nothing in this report says please stay as you are. None of the recommendations are status quo. So we do really need to think about where we go to next, and the context for that also needs to be in what reform of local government could look like. And that needs to be a conversation that this group should be leading, and certainly be a part of for Canterbury and for our region. One of the issues with the way that we meet together and the different, whether it's the Mural Forum or the Greater Christchurch Partnership or our own councils, it's people, it's being able to hear the conversation and not be a part of it, and how that happens at the Mural Forum level. And we've reported back to this group before that if you're in the Mural Forum or you're part of a council that's not part of the GCP, there's suspicion about what the GCP is doing, because they're not here and a part of the meetings. And as much as we try and share what's going on with Canterbury, it's actually difficult when you're not here for the rest of Canterbury to feel like this is GCP's doing stuff in their interest as well for Canterbury. And then I've heard today too, when the Mural Forum talks about things, for those that aren't in that room, again, there's this, but what's been talked about and what's going on there, and the trust that actually what the Mural Forum's doing is also in the best interest of Canterbury, which is in the interests of Greater Christchurch area and our council. So it's that tension, I think, that's going to be required to be resolved. And things, as others have said too, we've already got too many things. It's about rationalising what we've got, figuring out how they fit together better, and probably having fewer of us structures. So you're looking forward to that conversation next term, and appreciate all the recommendations that are in the report. Thank you.
Kia ora, Sam. Thank you. Nikki?
Thank you. And again, thank you for the report, and acknowledge the achievements that this group has had to date. Being somebody that's sat here for 2 terms now, I guess I'm an intermediate, I suppose. I don't know if I still have training wheels on, I'm not sure, but I don't always pop up and have a word, but I always sit and intently listen to what you all have to say. One of the things that this group really has a strength in is that it allows all of our respective councils to have independence and autonomy, preserve our identities of the places that we represent, but collaborate together on the things that we have common goals for. There's always a change in political winds. I don't think I've seen a wind-free day yet. At the beginning of a triennium, we've got that transition of bringing new people on board and bringing them along to, okay, this is where we are so far, and you feel like you're repeating yourself, and I'm sure that they felt like that whenever I turned up here, and then we had that, half a year or so again bringing the next group on, and then of course we just get our feet under the table just in time for a change in government, and for instance, our hard-fought Whakawhanake Kāinga committee. Gone. And we're back to square one again. That is immensely frustrating. It feels difficult that we're always just close, but not close enough to getting those goals. It's a rinse and repeat situation. But the solidarity in this room and around this table is key to weathering those changes. We need to bring our councils and the people that we represent in those councils along for the ride. It's no good to sit in this room and then not bring that back to your council and talk about it. And because this becomes just another room where we talk about things that, it's a secret club and other people don't know about it. If you're not talking about this around your council table, you're doing it wrong. But yeah, the only way that we can really have any forward momentum and also get the attention of whoever is in the beehive is for us to stand strong here together and work together. But I just really do hope that this group sees fit to carry on together and keep bringing people with you. We need to keep having those conversations. It's not a one and done. It's an all the time thing. So anyway, that's just my observations. But yeah, thank you for your report. And yeah, it has been challenging, I think, but that's democracy for you.
Kia ora, Nikki. I think that was everyone who wanted to speak. Thank you, everybody, for everything that's been said. I'll reinforce again that, and it's a pretty good consensus around the room, that we're not talking about like breaking up. We're actually talking just about how to make it better, because that's pertinent for all of us, all of our councils that we sit on, all of our runanga that we're part of, all of our people that are in our communities that rely on us to make decisions and to work together. So I think that's really important starting point, that none of the options are about having a breakup. It's about how do we do it better. But I did know, and like I said earlier on, when you look at the scoring system, and I like numbers, so I sort of put numbers to the stars and added them up. So, it's out of 25. And if you did it like a university paper or something, so the top one, option 4, is only 60%. So it's only like a B- or something, just so you know. And the option 2 which is the Mural Forum one, was a 48. So I think that's like a C, maybe, or a C-, or even a D. So it's just a way to look at it. So none of the options that are put forward are sensational, but as we know, we're not perfect either. So you have to work with what we can and where we need to move to. I would say, and Victoria, thank you for raising the question about what makes us different or things like that. We definitely are unique here in both Greater Christchurch and Canterbury. We are the biggest region in New Zealand. We're the second largest city in the country. We do have amazing, we've got mountains at the top of or when we look to the west, we've got the most rivers, the most water in the whole country. We've got, a diverse range of economic activities across our whole region. And we are long and skinny in terms of a region, which is actually quite important when you think about our geography, with a mass concentration of people in the middle of that long and skinny shape, which does cause some problems, I think, in terms of how do you communicate. And as a regional councillor, when I go to the mayoral forum, everyone's talking about their area, whether that's Waimati, Christchurch, Waimakariri, Kaikoura, Timaru, and I'm there thinking Canterbury. I'm there thinking, well, I care about all of it. I have to care about all of it. And I think that's just what we've got to get. And we've had some really good conversations about how you think about that more. And I think that goes to where this is landing. And like I said at the start, and like others have reflected, it is just about how we structure ourselves. And Gail, you raised that, the functional scope. But that leads into, how do we do it better? And I believe that the current structures that we have and the current laws that make those structures are not fit for purpose, neither for the past and the Kāinga Nohoanga strategy. People who've read that will see that there's things that have happened in the past that aren't great and haven't led to maybe the things that people had aspirations for, but neither is it fit for our future, I don't think. So the law will have to change, and obviously the government's looking at that right now. And I think it's pertinent for all of us to think about that. And at the Regional Council, we've tried to share what we've been thinking, because we have done a lot of thinking about this. We've tried to look at new models going forward, which do relate to some of the things in here, especially option 4 around unitary authorities. We've tried to do some thinking about that. And when we looked at unitary authorities, they posed lots of questions for us. Whereas the other models that we had looked at got a bit more favour around our table. Just that's all I'll share at the moment. But you can watch the live streams of our 2 workshops we've had on that if you wish, and we can also send out, as we have to the mayors, but we haven't sent it to every councillor in the region or every Papatipu Rūnanga member. We have to Papatipu Rūnanga chairs the work we have been doing, because I want people to engage with that and think about it, because it is pertinent to some of the future about how we arrange ourselves better and more efficiently. And that's the things that I've picked up, and especially the most immediate actions that the report has told us about. We need to do a good job of induction in October or post-October through to when we may have a first Greater Christchurch Partnership meeting in December, which is the next one on, which I've got the date at the end of this meeting. The 5th of December is already locked in, but we need to do some really important work post-October the 11th to December the 5th. Because there are some ideas in here about moving to quarterly meetings, keeping the interim chair for now, but obviously that first meeting should be about this, to be honest. You've got to have a really good workshop, because you're going to have to bring potentially new people up to speed about why this is important, why we're not breaking up, but why we have to be better. I would compel us all to really think about that. If you are back, help that process be the best it can be. Be open to listening and thinking about new ways we can do things. And obviously, like Neville said, it is every day that we're having to respond to government change, but that is necessary. But I think we can be better by carrying on, talking to each other and meeting these forums, even though it's difficult. Things like combined secretariats, enhanced mayoral forums, or bringing it all together, proper delegations and mandate are all important. And the one I've heard today that's probably most important is how we communicate with our partners, both our fellow councillors and Papatipu Rūnanga, but our community. So how do we do that better? Because obviously that's a thing that's not happening all the time. But as members here will know that it is difficult. to keep all the communication channels going across everything that we're all doing. So just acknowledge the work that's done, and thank you for the discussion, thank you for the work, and thanks for everyone's openness to keep looking at ways to be better going forward. So happy to put the resolutions up on the screen if everyone's happy to move to that now. So we've got 5 resolutions there to receive the work that's happened, to note the review that's been done, and to note that we'll continue the interim chair arrangement until we get a chance to deal with this in the next term, and also note the initial scoping of that, the phase 1 recommendations, which is sort of that immediate steps stuff, and lastly to recommend that this partnership committee receives this and deals with it in the next term. So do I have a mover for that? Victoria, thank you, and Dan seconded. Does any more discussion needed? We happy? All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sarah and Kat. Thanks for all the work. And thanks for the great discussion, everybody. That's great. So next up, I think I've seen my whanaunga Kyle come into the room. So tēnei te mihi kia koe e hoa, no mai hara mai ki tēnei tepu. And I saw Kyle down the back, and I thought about the work that Kyle and I did actually. Come, hara mai, bro. We worked on together with the district plan, and Kyle and I were charged with having to map about 90 sites of significance for Ngāi Tahu. I was working for I was on the city council side, and Kyle was on the iwi side, and that was a great piece of work that we did together. So just acknowledging that, Kyle. So tēnei te mihi kia koe anō. Welcome here, and I'll hand over to you, and thanks Tanya for supporting Kyle with this. So over to you guys. Thank you.
Kia ora hoa. Ngā mihi ki a koe. Tēnā koutou i ngā rangatira o ngā kaunihira o Greater Christchurch. It's an honour to be with you this morning. And Craig, that seems like an age ago, my friend. I'm a lot greyer now. Look, it's with great privilege to be able to present to you today and to have helped with the completion of the Greater Christchurch Kāinga Nohoanga strategy, and just to wish you the best as you receive it. Essentially, I'm just waiting for my slide prompts to pop up. John is used to my technical difficulties by now, I think. But essentially, the new staff base at First Order was charged with bringing about the content for the strategy from July last year. And this entailed, as you can imagine, a whole series of internal movements and discussions and reimaginings, and not quite a reinvention of the wheel, but an opportunity for review. So I'll just take this opportunity to thank you and your staff, respectively, for your patience as we develop the content and its respective approvals. One of the key things with it that I'd like to sort of just tell you about was really to hone down on a proper and appropriate structure and function for the document. The new staff base, myself included, had to really understand where it was going to end up and potentially where it would be operationalised and what have you, based on past experiences and some projects that had kicked off in parallel, which are aiming to give effect to it with some of the district councils we're working with already. Essentially, one of the closest interesting allegories for a document of this type was found in British Columbia, and with respect to some of the aspirations, particularly economic and development aspirations of the native people of that province in Canada. And so we essentially were able to adopt aspects of that structure and concepts and discuss them, analyse them, and really inform our Aotearoa reps as they communicated amongst themselves. And then, as you can imagine, some of our more interesting tribal academics weighed in and provided some interesting material. And we were able to, not so quickly, but in the end, I don't have to hold this down?
No.
Oh, cool. Right. It's not like a thing?
No.
All right. Sweet. To get the content together, to put it in a nice, tidy document. We also had intermittent advice from John and his staff as well, which was very helpful. We took opportunity at times within the context of other project work with some of the operational staff at district councils to glean some insight and advice, different forums and things, just as we were working on other items, and we found those particularly helpful and served to provide great sort of refreshment of memory on a lot of things that had transpired in a regulatory context over the last decade or so. I'll just switch to the next one. What's key and crucial to the document is the description of some goals, the nice to haves, the focus or foci within it. And as you can see there, it highlights the age-old problem with infrastructure, which I'm sure you're all aware of variously in other contexts as well. And there has been some initial projects that have kicked off to analyse some of those deficits and some strategies to remedy that, citing our colleagues at Waimakariri District Council, being very helpful. But looking forward to working with the rest of you as well. The on-reserve, off-reserve thing is going to be an interesting one for us all to understand and grapple with. As you can imagine, with Native people, Māori in particular, interests aren't so much as can be confined to a geographic boundary, a microcosm within a macrocosm, and economic and development interests and all sorts of facets occur across the takiwā. The third goal sort of looks at some of those more fiscal related authority style things, and it really begs the question around what types of things should rest with local authorities or not. Are there certain types of economic zoning or the like that might be appropriate for the original reserve extents, or perhaps other areas? There are some pretty interesting international examples, particularly newer ones in the 21st century, that are going to be worth looking into as we establish work streams with you, which brings us to the fourth goal, is the establishment of those work streams with the respective districts and our regional council as well. I'd just like to point out that there are some projects emerging that are already attempting to give effect to that. I'm very excited about them, and Whiti Ora is obviously coupled with Ngāi Tuahuriri, but also advocates for like processes with our cousins over at Rapaki as well. The final slide I've provided you with here were sort of some just generalistic and thematic suggestions with respect to the breakdown within the partners. Not the breakdown, but the makeup of the partners. Each of your districts and the region as a whole have specific circumstances and concepts, nuances that will continue to be ironed out. Dan and his colleagues and staff are well aware of MR873 and its problems, and that was one of the cases that we felt appropriate to use as a key example. Notwithstanding, there are many facets to that are allegorical for the Māori reserves in Greater Christchurch and Canterbury region as a whole. So, what was fortuitous about that case was that there was a large amount of information compiled already, particularly in the academic context, that was easily obtained, and a lot of thought gone into it. But like I say, very, very allegorical circumstances. And then, research is probably one of the most important parts, and I completely understand the the tone around getting going with things and what have you. Research can be a thing that's quite lengthy and can hamstring initiatives, but nevertheless, the opportunity should always be taken to really, really examine specifics and context. And I think I'll leave it there for now. Those things you see there are very minute, sort of suggestive things, but I encourage you to advocate for the establishment of the work programs with the Papatūpiranga partners, and I look forward to being a part of that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole.
I do, Tanya. Got it.
No.
All good. Well, I will open up for any questions and discussion. But first of all, hey, thank you, Kyle, and the team at Whitiora that have done the work on this. And thank you for the presentation, because it has actually given even another layer of specificity here, especially when you've gone through each council partner here and sort of pointed to those things that are really important. So thank you. And also those 4 goals that you've highlighted previously. Obviously, like I said before, I understand somewhat. This is actually new information for me as well about all those acts of parliament in the past that have done certain things. And I think that's really been important to understand that history of aspirations that people had, that what they thought might happen, but doesn't always work out that way. So, but a chance is in front of us to do something about that. And so I think that's really important that the report's highlighted, even in recent times. Like, it points to some of the things that Environment Canterbury has done or hasn't done. But I think that's really important to be so specific about it, because it is actually helpful to then point those things out and say, well, actually, these are the things that need to be better. So thank you for that. So happy to open it up to any questions that people have. Gail.
On the development of the strategy. And that it's to be included in our Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan. The strategy certainly provides a comprehensive overview of the history, challenges and disconnect from place that Ngāi Tūruriri and Māori katoa have faced in the past and in many ways still do today. The story within the strategy is one which reflects the experiences and barriers that have been created by legislation and misunderstandings that have restricted so many of our people from being able to live on their ancestral lands and in the wider Greater Christchurch urban area in a way which aligns with our values, our cultures and our whānau's practices and aspirations. Ngāi Tūruriri have captured the goals, details and actions within Section 5 of Ngā Herenga and local government in the strategy required to allow all runanga to provide for the housing, spiritual and cultural needs of mana whenua, both within our Māori reserves and urban spaces. I've spoken many times here about Rapaki's aspirations for our Littleton West school site, which was purchased with the express view to provide affordable homes for our people. We've invested significant funding and time into ensuring that we provide the homes and community that our people have told us that they want to live in and how they want to live in that space. This strategy provides the framework for those aspirations to happen. I hope that it will now be embedded into our planning and implementation and be successfully put into place, as its success is pivotal to the prosperity of our hapu going into the future. So thank you, well done. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Gail, tēnā koe. Dan.
Just to firstly acknowledge Kyle and Tanya and just say, look, it's a really good, excellent report. Thank you for the information that's been presented here. And thank you for the acknowledgement to our team as well through this. And I want to acknowledge our Chief Executive here today and our entire team as we are on this journey to make a Kāinga Nohonga strategy work for our district and work for Māori Reserve 873. There are just things in our past that were just not right. And you just can't be proud of those. You just can't. But I'm proud of the work that we're doing to put that right and to work together in partnership those discussions and how we give effect to it are the pieces that we are focused on. New provisions in our district plan, which give effect to that, and the tweaks that we will need along the way to make sure that that works. And we're open to that. It's been a journey that started. I remember the challenge that came from the late Rick Toe as we started those discussions, and that we should never be afraid of having these discussions and to acknowledge where we haven't got things right. We should own up to that, put our hand up. It's what you do about it that's important. As a council, we really want to see these provisions work, and I want to acknowledge Nikki and Neville, who've been part of our district plan journey, so thank you, team, that's enabled in working alongside with Megan and others that were part of our district plan review that's led to these provisions. We are very pleased with what's there. We now want to make sure we are effectively giving effect to this. We want this to work, and so long as I have influence, we'll make sure it does. Thank you.
Kia ora, Tan. Any other members wish? Lydia? I can come back to you, Tana.
Look, I think this is a great opportunity to support kāinga nohanga. It is something that you want to do. It is your land, and you should be enabled to do so. I think that this is fantastic to actually move into this space and support your aspirations, and it gives clear scope and enablement to do so. You should be able to do the things that you want with your land, with your business, with your development, with your housing, for your people. And I think that it is great to pave the way for other local mana whenua as well. So I just want to acknowledge the frustration of not being able to do that. And we are here to support and help and enable through that process. So thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. Grant?
Yeah, thanks very much for this. Look, I'm looking at the spatial plan, and one of the overarching directions is enable prosperous development of kāinga nohanga on Māori land and within urban areas. So this is another step in that direction. Also, from the regional council's perspective, we've made recent submissions in supporting or making commentary on the NES of Papakāinga housing, and also made sort of similar comments about housing typologies, mixed use and intensification on as part of the urban growth. No, what is it called? Sorry. What's the recent one we've just done? Oh, part of the going for growth submission on that. We get a lot of feedback with Councillor Karako about Papakāinga housing. To me, it's really, really exciting. And if that, how you go about making that happen is probably the next step. But I was interested in the fact that the 2007 urban development strategy and the section 6.7 tangata whenua chapter, the very first action says, investigate the development of housing on MR 873 land adjoining Wood End through the preparation, consultation and adoption of an agreed outline development plan. So it's a long time in coming and still a little way to go. But good on you. Cheers.
Thanks, Grant. Anyone else before I go back to Dania?
Kia ora mai tātou, and I suppose this is the time whether we want to be big and bold with our relationships sitting here at this table. To give you a heads up, I am going to do this, which is work with central government on zoning. We heard at local government conference that they're going to move from 86 zones to 11 zones. I'm going to ensure that we have I'm happy to use their wording, Māori purpose zone or whatever it is, and I'm working with other iwi to ensure that we can capture a zone by itself instead of it just being under residential zoning. So underneath the larger Māori purpose zone, the plan to do will be to then get it regionalised. And in our region, we have Kāinga Nohoanga, which is bigger than just Papakainga, and it's around economic development and what that looks like. But part of that will be in an urban area, what my white paper might look like, and it's how we deem zones, Kāinga Nohoanga, and that's something that we need to be big and bold about. You would have seen in the paper how we deem zones from council, from roads. So I look at it, and I haven't quite got to the detail of it. If I've got a 5,000 square metre section in an urban area, what's the criteria to deem that Kāinga Nohoanga? How do we work together? Who is the person who has the authority to deem? Is it partial of the new, I don't know what the new RMA looks like, whether it still has section 33 or it goes to a 36B, unsure, but we will be putting up a white paper, whether it's of a submission or whether we get in the doors with all the other iwi to ensure these are the things that we can do. So it's more about deeming areas and how we can realise different activities. I want to be very clear, in Canada where some of this stuff happens, it's not just Māori who live in urban areas. You know, I would say there are a lot of tauiwi or non-Māori or non-Canadian. There's probably more non-natives living on the reserves of native reserves than what there is. So it's not, we live under a kaupapa of Pita Tohori, aroha ki te tangata. It's realising aspirations and looking after a wider community than just ourselves. In reserves, it will be different, but off reserve, we've got bigger opportunities on how we do this. But I thought I'd give you the heads up of where we're heading towards on how we deem zones, what that authority looks like, what's the criteria that looks like to do this, and be really clear about my intentions, whether through submissions or whether just having hui with Bishop. Hoi anō.
Kia ora, Tania. And thanks again, Kyle and Tania, for the work that's been done, and you've heard the acknowledgements in the room. Yeah, I really liked on page 24 the categories that you'd put in there to make it clear about the other opportunities. Obviously, Māori reserve land is obvious and maybe a bit easier, as you said, the on-reserve stuff, but the off-reserve stuff is deemed to have the same status in the zone you talked about, Tania. So, yeah, I implore that work that you will do with government to try to make sure that there is something there for iwi and hapu around the country, to be able to have that recognised nationally. And then, of course, the challenge for us here locally is how we enable that, and the deem zoning korero that's in here is really important for us to think about how you could do that so it's not too onerous. Because if it's too onerous, nothing will happen, and you have the same problems and the same outcomes that are highlighted in part of this report, where people just have to go move to somewhere else because they can't do it on their own land. So I think that's really important. Looking forward to the work that may come. And I note that one of our resolutions is that we have a workshop when the new committee is reformed to get on and have another session. So again, you can inform the people that are here and try to really get down to the schedule of projects, like you said, Kyle, about what we can actually do together locally. So, and the other thing I'd say is, let's be open to looking at those mechanisms that we can do locally to really enable and facilitate a new way of doing things, and don't be scared of it. Let's be open to it, because if we can have the discussions and get the programs working like Grant reinforced. I mean, I remember that UDS work from a while back, and I remember Uncle Rick speaking to those submissions in the UDS forums. And it is a long time and we're still there, but I do acknowledge the work that you have been doing with Waimakariri to get things into the district plan and make progress. So that's what we need to do more of. So thank you again. Should we put the resolutions to the floor? You're happy to move it, Neville? Thank you. Any seconder, Sarah? Thank you. Any more discussion required?
I just want to acknowledge the work that's been done, and I really, really welcome this. I've been sitting around a table for a long time, and it's been a discussion that's been had since even before I became a councillor. It became really relevant 3 years after I became a councillor, and been working on it ever since. So I really do applaud the work that you've done, and actually apologise for the time that it has taken to get to where we are. We've worked through a pretty extensive public process as well as one within our own council. So I'm really pleased and hope that each one of you will support this really, really strongly in moving forward, and hopefully it is a step forward for all of us.
And the only other thing I did forget to mention, and you mentioned it, Tanya, is the RMA changes, and I think that is critical. The signals we're getting about spatial plans is important, because this is going to be key to, I think, spatial planning. And I know that's Grant's favourite topic, so that's good that I've mentioned it. But also what you see there about having all the district plans being brought together into one place, and obviously some rationalisation there. So that's going to be, and it's a challenge for us all, and it will be a challenge for the planners and the people that work on that, but I think ultimately a really good thing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it was interesting because I appreciate the original scope was to try and do plan changes, but there was so much changes anytime we were going away, we going towards a certain way on what a plan change could look like. We were pulled back from a different reform happening. So appreciate that you guys have been in this space as well with every type of changes you're trying to do to tidy up your plans, but that's where it was getting to for us. So we thought actually we need to stop trying to make a plan, because we're all in let's be honest, a dysfunctional reform for 9 years now. So it was too hard to just to put a hoe in the ground or stick in the ground and say this is what it is, because it would have been outdated in a month because of the different changes that was happening.
Kia ora, Tanya. So happy to put this to the vote. Does anyone else want to speak? No? All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you again, Kyle. Have an awesome rest of your day. And we have to catch up sometime. Be good. Okay, I think we're moving back to number 7, and that's our submission on the government's growing. Everyone happy to carry on? Everyone's good? You have a stretch or something if you want, but I think we're good to carry on. And is it? Yeah, kia ora, Mark. Welcome to the table. Happy to hand straight to you and introduce this paper. Kia ora, or John, either way.
Through you, Chair. This is intended to kind of run through as Mark came to the table, but he's nice and punctual. I'll keep this sort of short, a few framing, and then really open for the discussion, but just a few pertinent points. Firstly, that the timeframes in respect to the consultation have kind of necessitated a highly compressed process for developing this proposed submission through the Planning Managers Group. Mark's here to represent that group here at the committee meeting. The government's discussion paper is both part of the Going for Housing Growth program, but also really links in, as you'll see, that links into the design of the new resource management system. So this is important to the Greater Christchurch sub-region, as well as more broadly across Aotearoa, of course. The draft submission has drawn from partners' own submissions that are obviously going through their own approvals processes at the moment, in addition to a lot of the work that's been done through the partnership, including the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan and the Joint Housing Action Plan as well. The discussion paper itself covers a lot of ground. There's 37 questions. It's big. A lot of the questions deserve their own discussion paper in many instances as well. But there's 37 questions there. But this submission really starts to hone in on those questions that relate to the partnership's sub-regional focus and really around that urban growth emphasis as well, that we've kind of heard around the table as well today. And on that point, I'll sort of open up for discussion.
All good. Any questions? Yep, Dan.
Just to the point I raised earlier in the meeting, my understanding there has been an update of wording since advised by our staff. So if you could just clarify what that is. My understanding is that's value capture, whatever that term means. But that is the update to inclusion rezoning. And if that is the case, then we're more comfortable with that than what was there before.
And that's in clause 30 and 31.
That's right. As I understand, but perhaps you could just clarify that.
Through your chair, that's correct. So it is use of value capture and for seeking the consideration of value capture versus necessarily inclusionary zoning. So that has been the key change as well. And really, I think the point is there for consideration.
Cool. So we've introduced some new wording so it's not exclusionary zoning, it's value capture, which could include that, but also other things. So that's good. Thank you, Vicky.
Yeah, there's a lot in here. I totally feel your sense of having to consolidate a lot in a very short period of time. And we just had this come to us, well, not this one, but our one to our Strategy and Policy Committee this week. One observation I have, and I wonder if there's an opportunity to pop a little bit more in on the blue-green infrastructure, which is one of our key moves. And some wording that I and it could fit in a few places, but it's only really I could only find blue-green mentioned, I think, once in here. And the wording that I could propose is something along the lines of blue-green infrastructure is an important component of the spatial plan, contributing to good quality developments and efficient, cost-effective management of stormwater, including as a response to intensification. So it's quite fundamental to many aspects that this could help with. And we did also have in our Strategy and Policy Committee, I'm going to struggle to find it now. Hang on. I love being everything online, except here we go, got it now. So in one of the things that we popped into our submission, which I particularly liked, is the line as well that it is also essential that national direction under the NPS for freshwater management and the NPS for urban development is closely aligned to ensure coherent and integrated management of land use, water resources and infrastructure planning. And that was something I always felt that those two NPSs were not well integrated, and they should be. So it's possibly an opportunity to pop something in about the integration of those two, just a single sentence.
Thank you for having me. On the first point of reference to the blue-green network, I'd note paragraph 7 in the submission documents, the value of the natural environment in achieving a well-functioning and resilient urban area, and it refers to the blue-green network in the context of the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plans. So happy to consider further additions, but that point's captured there.
Yeah, I did note that I found it in one place, but it felt other points are sort of emphasised by repetition, and I feel that one is a key move, and so it just felt to me that we could potentially reference it in one other place in here just to reinforce that point.
We're happy to consider that additional wording. Thanks.
Thanks, Vicky. Just on that, so are people reasonably comfortable with just some additional small wording on blue-green infrastructure just to reinforce the point? Are people comfortable with that? I mean, we'll leave it to the staff to update something. I mean, along the lines of what Vicky said, as long as there's no allergic reaction to that, I think that's pretty good. I mean, it does relate to our spatial plan. It's all wording from the spatial plan, so it should align. In terms of the NPS, freshwater NPS UD alignment, I mean, that is quite an important point. I don't know if others have thought about that, but going forward, I think we've made general submissions to that point that all those national policy statements actually should be aligned. I'm pretty sure the Minister said something similar, actually, that there's got to be better alignment between those national policy statements, or else we're in a mess. So I think it's a good point to highlight, especially in the context of both regional and district authorities. Is everyone happy that we just note that point? I mean, it's not really going too hard. It's just saying, come on, please look at that when you make changes, that they're aligned. Is everyone comfortable with that? Cool. Anyone else got things they'd like to raise? Grant?
Yeah. Given the discussion we've just had from Tanya, I'm wondering on page 69, clauses 11 and 12, is that now sufficient? It seems a bit underwhelming, given the report that we've just received.
Yeah, I wonder if we do acknowledge the strategy that's just been done. I mean, it could just be acknowledged that we've received it. We've got work to do, but it could be important just to acknowledge that. Yeah, are people comfortable with that? I mean, we can just acknowledge the strategy has been completed and it's been received, and there's more work to happen. But you could point to it, and people could then seek it out. So,
through the chair, I think potentially you recognise I'm trying to think of the word. Sorry, you recognise how not just at a greater partnership level, but at an individual council level, we all understand and progressively moving forward on how we resolve these types of issues. Because it's not just at this partnership, it's at every council, as you've seen up there, and probably acknowledging the progressiveness of the councils to be on board on these things in the first place.
I'm wondering if we could recognise the importance of having that zone recognised, so that there is a zone for things like kainga nohoanga and the national rationalisation. I think that could be an important point, that we think that's an important thing for the government to actually focus on, so that there is in the language they've used, Māori purpose zone, but that is essential. So that could be acknowledged, and that does link to the strategy that we've just heard about. Are people happy with that? Cool, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Yeah, Nikki?
More just a comment that I really, really like the way that two things that you've pointed out in this submission, that existing spatial plan should be recognized as a foundation. Yes, please, having just finished our district plan and its consultation period, or appeal period, hasn't even finished yet. So I like that. And I really also love the fact that you have in here repeatedly throughout this submission strongly pointing out that really, really out of sequence, unanticipated development is not only expensive to service, but there's an opportunity cost to that it undermines our ability to invest in infrastructure in the most viable way and to make that viable and to recoup our investments in that. And I think that you've repeatedly made that point through here really well. So tautoko that.
Thank you, Nikki. So with that in mind, I think with the resolutions on the screen, the second one gives us that ability to just include those three things, and I'm happy to work with that. It says that I'll sign that off so people trust me to get that wording right along the lines of what was said in this hui. Then we can do that. All good. So we're happy to move the resolutions. Sarah, thank you. Seconded, Dan, thank you. Any more discussion required? If not, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. We're on to number 8. We're almost there in terms of this part. That's good. Over to you, John. Go on.
3. Don't know. It's going to stay 9. Yep. Through you, Chair, just make the few points. I think the briefing pack speaks for itself, but just to point out that this information pack is designed to help brief incoming committee members, particularly those that are maybe new to it. It provides an overarching summary of the partnership's work, the committee's functions and meetings, and also the interface with other forums. And the Office of Recommendation is really looking in 2 parts. First, to seek the committee support for providing the briefing document to the incoming committee, but also then a handful of recommendations then for the incoming committee to consider an action as well, including part of that is around the interim chair arrangement as well, kind of connected back to the earlier independent review item as well. So on that point, happy to open up for questions through you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, Grant?
Just a question about this report and item 8. The about the text and the font sizes there are lots of fuzziness, and I can't read any of the diagrams on page 155 and 156.
You poor old bugger.
The text, yeah, I mean, without getting it wouldn't even work with a magnifying glass. So, I mean, can we be sure that you can have a look at that? I don't know. It seemed to me that some of the text has been added in through maybe a PDF and it's just plonked in, but that's fuzzy. What's the design package you're using to clarify those?
Through you, Chair, as I'm involved, it's nothing sophisticated, I can assure you. We can take that on. It might be just about how it's been compressed into the agenda pack in terms of that quality, but that's definitely something that we're obviously keen to make sure.
I did notice that too, actually, and yeah, approaching 50 soon, it's definitely something that starts to hit you, and you have to lean back or go forward or whatever. But yeah, I note that too, that they are really hard to read on some of the pages. So, any other questions or comments on this item? No. If not, let's put the resolutions up. Is someone happy to move? Lydia, thank you. Seconder, Victoria. Any more discussion required? Okay. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. So we've actually come to the end of our proper meeting here. And so like I noted earlier, the next meeting is the 5th of December. That's in the calendars. Obviously, it is the last meeting of our term, as I mentioned earlier on, and Neville's already noted that he's not going to be here going forward, and there are others, including myself. As people may know, I'm stepping down. I'm not standing again in the current coming up elections. I know Vicky is also the same. So just to acknowledge those of us that have not put a nomination in for the next elections, thank you for all your work that you've done. I know, Neville, like you said, you've been here a while, so thank you for all of your dedication and work. And Nicole. True, Nicole's another one. Sorry, I haven't been all over it, but yeah, Nicole's another one, been reminded. But I'll give people can have the chance to speak for themselves. But also to those that have put their nominations in and are restanding, good luck with that, and hopefully we see a good bunch of people return so to carry on this really important work. And of course, like Sarah said earlier, our Runanga representatives, well, they're the glue, because they're definitely going to be here, not just now, but forever. So there you go. But happy to hand and open the floor for any other people that want to make a statement about our last meeting here. Kia ora, Dan.
Craig, can we just firstly acknowledge you and thank you for stepping up and taking on the role of chair. I've certainly enjoyed working with you this term, and I think you've make a really great contribution, so thank you. And stepping in and doing this role also on top of a busy role as chair of Environment Canterbury is appreciated. I'd just especially like to acknowledge my colleague who's announced he's retiring, and there'll be an appropriate point for us to recognise Neville in our district, but 21 years of service is extraordinary. And he did claim it was 24, actually. And some of us did remind him that he would deliberately mislead our community and he should serve another 3 years so he could fulfil that. But unfortunately, he wasn't persuaded. I think he made an error in not putting his nomination in on time or something along those lines. But to others here, who also are retiring, thank you for all that you've done. I think today for us has been, I think, a really big meeting in the items that we've considered, and culminates, I think, us finishing on a really good note for this term. Those of us that are seeking our performance reviews, we will find out shortly whether we get back. It's a performance review like no other. But I'd like to acknowledge also, Mr. Chair, through you, all our staff that support the GCP through the SOB, or all our other contributing staff through the various structures. They do an extraordinary job for us. Make sure we're well briefed, make sure our interests are looked after, make sure the discussions are occurring at various levels that mean that when we get here, by and large, those things are largely dealt with. And we've got here things one thing that we do as a council, I'm not sure if others do, but it is, to Nikki's point earlier, it's a standing item on our agendas at a full council, where we do brief our council on the GCP, on the mayoral forum, on all matters, and through our standing committees as well. So if that doesn't occur in others, that may be something to reflect on, but that's what we do. And so we do make sure that our elected members are kept briefed. Gosh, if we didn't, we'd be in the cart, well and truly. And also it provides a mandate for us to be here. I occupy a role. We occupy roles. We don't have the full mandate of our council without their blessing. So we do go back and do check that. So just for, and make sure there's regular check-in points, and we do keep them brief. So it's perhaps just something I was reflecting on in discussions earlier, that there are good ways to, and better ways perhaps for us all to consider that. But really enjoyed this term. Thank you everyone for what you do, and good luck for those who are seeking different futures, and for those of us hoping to continue. Thank you.
Kia ora, Dan. Anyone else wish to speak? Grant?
I was just reflecting on the comments from the independent, the people who gave the independent report earlier on about the positivity from people who have been involved with this partnership for a reasonable amount of time. I'm thinking Nicole and your participation in the hearings panel, and Neville, long-standing member of the committee, and Craig, the sentiments of Dan. You're going to be sadly missed around this in terms of your role, but thanks for stepping up for that. And Vicky too, like me, blue-green infrastructure, and all of those things, because it is about the health of our urban environments, and our waterways and our green links, active transport, so that the advantages of all of that are pretty important part of our direction and opportunities. So certainly want to see that advanced. I keep looking at thinking it's just sitting there going idle, but I'm sure somebody's working on it. But look, I'm standing again, but Dan, we'll just wait and see. So well done for everybody.
Thank you, Grant. So like I said, I'm not going to do the karakia actually now, because it'd be a bit weird, because we've still got a bit more to do, but I'll do a karakia at the end of our session today. But I did want to leave you with two whakatauki, or two sayings, and one is the one that Tania mentioned earlier on, the saying that Pete Tahori, who was a upoko of Ngai Tuahuriri, kia atawhai te iwi, so that's look after the people. So that's really important, that that's something that we all think about going forward, and it is saying that's, especially post-earthquake, that's become synonymous with the city and the planning that's been happening. And the other one, which relates to Grant, that he's just said, is toi tū te marae nui o tāne, toi tū te marae nui o Tangaroa, toi tū te iwi. So if you look after the domain of tāne, the forests, the birds, and the domain of Tangaroa, the water, the ocean, then we'll be fine as well. So I think that's pertinent to what we do. So I'll leave you with that in terms of concluding our meeting. We'll declare this part of the meeting closed. We'll have a little break. I reckon let's have 15 minutes, and we'll come back at 11:45, and then we'll get on with our next part from there. Ka pai. And then we're going to have lunch right at the end, people, if you can hang around for that. So thank you. Kia ora.